In today's video, we're gonna create this in After Effects. Shoot the video in 4K because we are going to recreate the camera animation later in After Effects. Alright, import your videos inside After Effects and drag and drop. Create a new folder, rename this footage, and I'm going to drag inside all the 3 footage inside this folder to stay organized. And I'm going to drag this main footage inside these new composition layers, Control K, and rename these to main comp. Hit OK. Scrub through the timeline and find the timestamp of the card just slipping away from your hand. Hit star on the keyboard to set a marker. Scrub further through the timeline and trim the footage just before you, pretending to catch the card somewhere here. Control Shift and D. And let's jump to the timestamp where you have the real card on your hand and pretending to catch the card somewhere around here. I'm gonna trim it by holding down Alt and begin square bracket, and I'm going to stitch both of these together by dragging this and zoom in, and you can adjust the timing so that you have a seamless transition. After you have the footage in place, you can scrub the time indicator here and hit N on the keyboard to set the work area. Right click and trim comp to work area. Drag your time indicator on the marker, select the footage, grab the pen tool, and we're gonna mask this out. Hit M on the keyboard to reveal the mask, and we're gonna set this to none and set a keyframe for the mask path, and we're gonna animate the mask. Double click on this and we're gonna try to follow the card. Just go frame by frame like this, and we're going to follow this card. Once you're done, go back to the mask, set this to subtract. If you zoom out, you have this. So we're gonna grab the clean plate from the project panel and just drag it just below the footage. Go to the project panel, select the card and drag it to the new composition icon, and we're gonna duplicate this, rename this back and the other one to front. We're gonna switch off this eye for the front and go to right click and freeze frame on the back layer, and we're gonna grab the pen tool, zoom in, and we're gonna mask out this card. Alright, after you're done masking, click on this little icon, draw a box around the card, select the area, and we're gonna adjust this. Go to composition, crop comp to region of interest. We're gonna repeat the exact same step for the front layer as well. Right after that, go to the project panel, rename this to card back, Control D to duplicate, and I'm going to open this by double clicking, and I'm gonna switch off this and switch on the front, and I'm going to rename this as card front. Let's go back to the main composition, and we're gonna drag in the card back inside the composition, and we're gonna scale it down, and we're gonna adjust this timing roughly to the marker here, and we're gonna zoom in and try to match the size of the card, and you'll have to adjust a little bit here. Once you're satisfied with the position and size, you're gonna hit P to bring up the position, Shift and R to bring up the rotation, set a keyframe for both, and we're gonna go a few frames ahead, and we're gonna animate the Y values so that the card goes up. Drag it to the top, and you'll have to adjust the timing of the keyframe so that it matches the energy of your hand gesture. You can turn on the motion blur for the layers and for the composition to have a look at the final result. Once you're happy with the timing of this keyframe, we're going to animate the rotation. I'm going to set this 5 times, so we'll go up and rotate 5 times. Go forward a few frames and you're going to animate the card back, down. You'll have to match the animation with the hand gesture. Move forward a few frames and I'm going to change the position of the card somewhere around here. Let's move here and let's animate this rotation. Set it to 0 so that you have a rotating card like that. Also set a blank keyframe here. Select all the keyframes, F9 for easy ease. Go to the graph and we're going to tweak the graph something like this. Like this, so that you have a smooth animation. And when the card comes down, you'll have a smooth animation. So grab these handles and drag it like this so that you have a nice and smooth animation. Always keep in mind that you'll have to match the hand gesture with the animation of the card, so you can always fine-tune the graph like this. Go back to the normal timeline. Let's delete the last keyframe and maybe we're gonna move this keyframe away so that we have a slower animation to match the timing of your hand, or maybe modify this keyframe and maybe move the card up a little bit. And if you play it back, alright, that's much better. If you go forward and we're gonna set another keyframe, move the position of the card up, and we're gonna go to the graph editor and we're gonna change the graph of the last keyframe to something like this one so that you have a smoother animation. Okay, alright, let's go back to the normal timeline and let's trim the beginning of the card like this. Hold down Alt and begin square bracket to trim that. And if you preview this, you will have this animation. Very nice. Once you're done with that, you turn on the 3D switch for the layers and we're gonna animate the rotation of the card. So hit R to bring up the rotation. Set a keyframe for the Y rotation. Move forward a few frames and we're gonna rotate this. Enter the values, which is 2 times. Or maybe that's a little too much. Let's change it to 1. That's much better. Select both the keyframes, F9 for easy ease. Go to the graph as always. Let's zoom in and change the graph like this. Go back to the normal timeline. Hold down Shift and T to bring up the opacity and we'll set a keyframe. Move forward a few frames and set it to 0. Select all the keyframes, F9 for easy ease. Alright, let's zoom in the card and let's change the keyframe of the rotation. Let me go here, somewhere here. Let's drag the timing of this rotation. Let's shift this so that you have a smoother rotation animation like that. Alright, let's go to Photoshop and I have this design in Photoshop. You can see we have all in separate layers and we're gonna save this project file. Let's go back to After Effects. Let's open the project. Let's navigate to the project file. Click that, drag it in, and composition, retain layer size, and hit OK. Let's double click and we'll see that. Let's select all of the layers, Control C to copy, go to the main composition, and we're gonna go inside and paste it here. Okay, Control V to paste all the layers inside this comp. Alright, let's go and select layer, new, and create a new null object. And we're gonna select all the layers here and we're gonna parent this to the null object. Hit P and move the position of the null down, and all the other design elements move with that null as well. Okay, select all the layers and we're gonna set this to none. Select the logo layer and we're gonna change the anchor point. Hit Y on the keyboard and move this point in the middle of the circle and make that a 3D layer. And we're gonna move this down here because we're gonna animate this logo. You can reposition it, you can scale it down. Hit S and scale it down to 0, and we're gonna animate the scale of this. All right, right at this point, Remember, you'll also have to match the timing of the hand gesture. Set a keyframe for the scale, go a few frames forward, and we're gonna set this scale to, we're gonna set 50 or maybe 20, maybe 30. Okay, so you have that. Maybe that's a little too slow, and maybe I'm going to grab the last keyframe and move it closer so that you have a faster animation. Hold down Shift and P to bring up the position. Let's set a keyframe here and let's go forward a few frames, and we're gonna move this logo to where it belongs, somewhere here, and we're gonna scale this back up to 100%, and you'll have something like this. You can always fine-tune the look of the animation. Let's go and select this background layer. Let's hit Y on the keyboard or select this and change this anchor point to somewhere here, and we're gonna animate the position and rotation of this. Okay, hit P, hold down Shift and R to bring up the rotation and position. Go back to somewhere here, and we're gonna set a keyframe for both position and rotation. Come back, and we're gonna set the position here and set some values of this rotation and move it out of the frame like that. And if you play it back, you'll have that. Okay, all right, so select all the keyframes and we're gonna hit F9, go to the graph, and we'll change the graph as always like this to have a smoother animation. We'll also animate the opacity. Hold down Shift and we're gonna hit T, set a keyframe there and 0 like that. Okay, all right, let's go and select the other elements inside that box, which is the text, and subscribe and manage layers like that. And we're gonna hit S to bring up the scale, and we're gonna animate the scale of this. Okay, make sure you find the right timing for the animation, maybe right around here. Set a keyframe, go back a few frames, and we'll set this scale to 0. Select all the keyframes, F9, and you can always fine-tune the timing and the keyframes like this. Go to the graph, and we're gonna set the graph something like this for a smoother animation. Let's go back to the normal timeline. Let's select all these layers and change the color of the layer to yellow so that we are well organized. Let's select the background layer, and we're gonna set the blending mode to soft light. All right, let's drag in all the video assets. Here I have a video assets. I'm going to drag in the video assets and scale it down and reposition it as a grid. So it's a fast forward video. I hope you know how to do this. It's very simple, very straightforward. Okay. All right, select this null and move the position of the null at the top here. And we're gonna select all these layers and we're gonna parent it to the null object. Hit P on the keyboard, hold down Shift and S, set a keyframe for this, and we're gonna animate the position of this null. And we're gonna also animate the scale and set the position and scale 50% like that, maybe 80%. Select all the keyframes, F9, go to the graph, and we're gonna change the graph like always, like this. Going back to the normal timeline, let's collapse this and select all of these layers, color coded pink, and we're gonna parent this to the null object. Okay, and change the color of the null to red, and I'm gonna select all of these layers and change the blending mode to screen or soft light. All right, now that you have the video assets in place, we're gonna animate the scale of these assets. Select all the layers, hit S to bring up the scale and find the right timing. Set a keyframe, go back a few frames like this and set it to 0, and select all the keyframes, F9 for easy ease. Go to the graph and we're gonna set the graph like this. Let me go into normal timeline. Let's change the blending mode to soft light instead of screen. Okay, that looks much better. Select the null object, hit U on the keyboard to reveal the keyframes, and we're gonna animate this out. Set a keyframe there, move forward a few frames, and I'm gonna move it away from the scene like this, the position, and I'm gonna scale it up a little bit, and I'm going to move the entire thing out of the frame like this. Okay, so don't forget to turn on the motion blur, hit F4, and we're gonna set this motion blur for the layers, and what you'll have is this animation. Alright, let's select the null object, and we're gonna duplicate this, Ctrl D, and rename this YouTube controller. So we'll have the exact same null, just move it down below this null too, and we're going to select all these YouTube elements, and we're going to parent this to the new null object, and we're going to hit U to bring up the keyframes. Turn off the motion blur to work faster. I'm going to select this keyframe, and I'm going to delete the last keyframe because we need that YouTube thing on the screen. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to move the position of this down, and I'm going to also scale down the size so that we have a smaller size YouTube banner. Alright, that's the first part of the tutorial. Let's move on to the second one. So before that, we're gonna organize the project file. So I'm gonna scrub through the timeline and set the time indicator somewhere where the animation ends, and I'm going to hit B on the keyboard to set the work area so that we're going to save some time in rendering the frames. And I'm going to select all the elements that we have created and turn on these shy layers, and for this, so we are well organized and easier to work for the next step. Select the footage, Ctrl D to duplicate, and rename this roto. So we're going to rotoscope this. So I'm going to set the time indicator here, hold down Alt and begin square bracket to trim it, and go forward, and I'm going to trim the layer like this. Hold down Alt and square close bracket. We're gonna go to this and set this to full resolution. Double click on the roto layer, and I'm gonna pick the roto brush, and I'm going to brush on the subject like this, and I'm gonna hit play, so it's gonna analyze it. So once you're done, close this out, and you'll have a cutout subject. Alright, that is the first part of the tutorial. Now that we are going to the second part, I'm not going step by step because we have already covered this carousel animation in the previous tutorial. If you haven't watched that, you can watch this video. The link will be there in the description down below. So go watch that, and you can come back and watch this video. So I have the project file with me. I'm going to import the project file inside our current project, and we'll continue from there. Alright, I'll import the project file inside the composition, and I'm gonna drag in the project inside the main comp just below the roto layer, and I'm gonna move it here and align with the roto layer. And what I'm gonna do is turn on this 3D and this switch, and for the roto layer I'm gonna turn that a 3D layer. Alright, let's go to the camera perspective. Let's make some room here and just grab this, select this, and go to the top view, and we're gonna change the position and the anchor point of this layer. Okay, so grab this, and we're gonna change it to the middle, move it up. So this is very important because we're gonna rotate this from the center, so we're gonna move this to the center here. Alright, let's select the roto layer, and as you can see here, the roto layer is down here, so we're going to select this and move it down and roughly align the center with that position of that. Change it back to active default camera, and you'll have something like this. Alright, you can reposition this and adjust the position here, and we're going to animate the scale of this. So I'm going to find the right timing, and right about here, set a keyframe for the scale. Let's set a keyframe and go back, and we're gonna set the scale, back to 0, So it scales from 0 and comes out. F9 for easy ease, and we're going to change the graph to something like this as always. So move forward, scrub through the timeline, and we're going to move to the next animation. So I'm going to hit R, set a keyframe for this Y rotation, and you're going to move a few frames, and we're going to animate the Y rotation as I swipe through the screen like this. Okay, so we're going to add like this, and select all the keyframes, F9, go to the graph, and we're going to adjust the graph to match the hand gesture. So the speed has to match the animation of this, so that you have a very realistic feeling. So you can take some time to fine-tune this graph, because this graph will really matter. Alright, once you're done with that, hit P to bring up the position, and let's animate the position. Set a keyframe there, and I'm gonna move a few frames, and I'm gonna move the position up, and we're gonna set this out of the frame. I'm gonna select both these keyframes, and I'm gonna hit F9, go to the graph and change the graph so that you have a smoother animation. Now let's turn back the shy layers. Click this, and we're gonna select this YouTube banner. Select all of the layers, and I'm gonna unshy these layers and hit the shy button again, and we're gonna animate this as well. So select the null object, hit S, Shift and P, and we're gonna animate. Set a keyframe for this and scrub through the timeline, and we're gonna set a keyframe at the exact same position where we animate the carousel, and move the position, and we're gonna scale it down to 0. Okay, like this. Go and import the card, which is the front card. Drag and drop it inside the timeline, and we're gonna select the YouTube layers, and we're gonna shy that back. Alright, let's select the front and make this a 3D layer, and copy the scale of the back and paste it here so that we have the exact same size. And we're gonna move this card above and roughly align it with the YouTube banner. Hit P on the keyboard, hold down Shift and R, and set a position and orientation keyframe. Move forward a few frames, and I'm gonna drag it down somewhere here. Here you have to align this with the hand somewhere here. I'm gonna select these keyframes and delete this again for now. And let me just pull this up again, and I'm going to recreate that. So it's always going back and forth. So set an orientation keyframe, and I'm going to rotate the card, and I'm going down. Or all I'm trying to do is match the timing of the hand with the animation of the card. All right, so you'll have to match the velocity, the speed of the card. So let me just delete this orientation again and set this to 0, and I'm going to move this card even further down, and at the beginning here I'm going to add another keyframe. So right about here I'm going to drag this down so that the card is alright. So select all the keyframes, F9, go to the graph, and I'm going to change the graph to something like, you know, this one. Alright, let's go back to the normal timeline, and I'm going to set the orientation keyframe now. Okay, so I'm going to set this rotation, some random numbers here. I'm going forward, and I'm going to rotate the card back. Let me just zoom in here, and I'm going to rotate the card again, and the same ways, easy ease. Let's just tweak the graph to something like this. And the same with the position. I'm going to set the same graph for the position as well. So much better. And what I'm gonna do is trim the card, hold down Alt, close square bracket. All right, now that you have that animation, it feels like you're catching the card. Okay, so let's zoom in here, up here, and let's reposition this. Hold down Shift and S, set a keyframe for the scale, and I'm going to offset this here, and I'm going to set this to 0. Select all the keyframes, F9 for easy ease. So you have that. All right, let's go to the project panel and select this carousel 1, Control D to duplicate, go inside this, and we're gonna change the rotation. So hit R and change the Y rotation to some other slides here so that you have a random slides. Okay, go to the main comp. We're gonna duplicate this carousel 1, Control D, hold down Alt and drag and drop it on top of that. So it replaces that. So I'm going to reposition. So let's hit U and make sure you go and set the time indicator, current time indicator, to that keyframe. Select this 2, carousel 2, and set the time indicator here at the right keyframe right here, and drag it up, and you can reposition that wherever you want. Okay, you can select this carousel 1, the same thing with this, drag it down. So I'm going to drag it down a little bit here. All right, let's go and create a new composition and set this to 1080 by 1920 and rename this render comp. So we're gonna render it in this comp. Okay, hit OK, and I'm gonna drag and drop the main comp here, reframe this, and we're gonna set some keyframes for the position and scale. So that is the main reason why we composite everything in 4K. So we're gonna reframe this and work with the graph of the keyframe so that we have a smooth zoom in, zoom out animation. Okay, so right now we just have the position and scale animation, so it's kind of very unrealistic. So to make it some more realistic, we're gonna add a little bit of camera shake. So we're gonna create a null object, and then we're going to hit P on the keyboard, hold down Alt and click on the stopwatch, and we're gonna add an expression. So a wiggle expression, type wiggle, open bracket, and inside the bracket you type in 0.4, 40 and close the bracket. After that, you're gonna parent the layer to the null object. I hope you learned something from this video. Check out this video and playlist for more After Effects tutorials. This is Motion Designer, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.